What's up, Degener Nation? Welcome to the new BCS as part of the Big Bets on Campus podcast. I'm Stuckey. Joining me today, Collin Wilson, as always, and filling in for Brett McMurphy, his fellow BBOC co-host, Mike Calabrese. Before we get started here, we always, if you're new, we just, with the new BCS, we cover a wide range of some general topics, futures, talk about the weekend that was. We'll obviously talk some midweek Maction. And I'll go through some conference updates as far as tiebreakers are concerned, as I did last week. But before we do get to our biggest takeaways from week 12, proactive move. Indiana re-signed coach Curt Cignetti to a big new contract. Thoughts on the move? I think it's the timing before the Ohio State game. I think that this is a really good thing for college football. Obviously, a really good thing for Indiana. Can they sustain their success and become a real player in the Big Ten in years to come? We'll see. They really struck gold in the transfer portal. That's hard to sustain, but I think keeping Cignetti around is really going to give them a chance. And as far as timing is concerned, I mean, he's done everything anyone could have asked for and more. But as they approach a two-touchdown underdog, might as well get the contract signed before that game. Colin, thoughts on the move in Bloomington?
Yeah, I can see reasons why you would want to sign that before you have your biggest test of the season, which ultimately you could fail. And per the Action app, I've already made a bet that they will fail. I mean, the timing is good for Cignetti. I think there's other things out there too from an Indiana perspective. Cignetti's name is being dropped for every head coaching position that's coming up. I mean, obviously it's, pie in the sky, go get Cignetti. Not sure if it was actually feasible or probable, or even if Cignetti would leave. He is a different cat that walks to his own, walks to his own beat. But his name was popping up. And, if one of these blue blood programs is missing a coach, not saying, Brian Kelly's going to get fired. But what if LSU says, I'm done? We got to go get somebody. Cignetti has the personality to run a big time blue blood program. And I don't think he'll be in Indiana very long. I think it was really good timing. I think the bigger question for Indiana is, can you continue to raise enough NIL money to get some of these players like they did to build this roster? Because if you can't do this year over year over year, you're going to sink in the Big Ten. Look at Arkansas and the SEC. More money goes to basketball and baseball than the football program, and you can see it show up in the results in the standings. And Indiana, we'll see. Are you a basketball school or are you a football school?
Uh, Speaking of the standings, where I haven't looked in a bit. What is how many losses does Arkansas versus Kentucky have in the basketball standings? I haven't checked in a
I
minute.
I I don't know. I only count national championships, so we're on the board.
Well, you're behind in that regard too. Calabrese, thoughts on that move?
Yeah, I wish I could get an actual figure about how much this increases the chance of Indiana retaining him. Say they make it to the playoff, they beat Ohio State, they win a game. Even with this contract extension, does that raise it from a 15% chance these days to 30%? I mean, certainly he's saying all the right things, even the little tongue-in-cheek line where he basically said, why would I go anywhere else when I can build a powerhouse here in Bloomington? He gets it. He understands that if someone makes him a Godfather offer at a blue blood school, he's probably going to take it. I think everyone at the table, everyone's adults, including his agent. So they're going to listen to offers. They're going to kick the tires on some of them. But Indiana's doing everything they can do. And honestly, on the other side of it, could this be a year one kind of fluky outcome? Absolutely. But I still think the fan base and all the goodwill that he's built up, I think people are willing to forgive the administration if they get their doors blown off by Ohio State, they lay an egg in a bowl game, and they come back next year and lose 4 games. You have to try. Already in 3 short months, he's what the best coach the Hoosiers have had in generations, if not ever, in terms of a debut. So you got to at least kick the tires on making him a long-term offer to keep him. But I agree with Colin's assessment. It's not just the pure dollars and cents of this contract and the money that's going into his pocket. How do they have a long-term plan put together to bring in these athletes through the portal, keep them with NIL money? Because not every year you're going to hit a home run getting a Curtis Rourke you're going to have those situations where even with best intentions, you get a DJU instead. So there's going to be situations where even if you spend the money, it doesn't keep you at the top, third of the Big Ten. How does everyone react to that? Cignetti, the fan base, the administration.
Yeah, I'm on board with it. So I'm happy to have Cignetti around for as long as possible. He's great for the game, and as we know, all he does is win. Just Google him. But let's go biggest takeaways from week 12. I'll say again, there's just no elite team this year. I'll say it every week. That's going to make the playoffs great this year. I mean, even Texas is an Arkansas team that can't stop a nosebleed, and that offense was, yeah, pretty underwhelming. As far as just like they're going to blow you. I mean, because what we don't have that many great data points for Texas, all things considered. When they went up against Georgia, their offense looked horrendous. And then speaking of Georgia, they're going to be in the discussion. People wrote them off, but still one of the best staffs in all of college football. Still have a ton of talent. Are they elite? Elite? No, there's no elite team, but they're going to have a say before everything is said and done. Calabrese, I'll go to you. What's your biggest takeaway from week 12?
I'm a little bit shocked. I know that everyone got Colorado fatigue last year, and we got way ahead of ourselves in terms of the turnaround, and then the bottom drops out, and he became a punching bag for the whole offseason. One of the most interesting conversation points would be how much books were taking for them to win the conference, to win the national title. And it was a laugher, holding national title tickets in Colorado. Well, now they're in a position to play their way into the conference championship game, play their way into a first round bye, perhaps in the college football playoff. And I agree with Coach Prime getting interviewed after that game. His assertion is that they haven't even played their best football yet. I don't think they've played 4 quarters of perfect football on both sides of the ball yet. And to have two potentially top 5 draft picks running their offense and being that explosive engine, I think they could play a real wild card in the playoffs should they make it in. So that's a huge storyline to me. I understand the schedule could not have broken any better for Colorado and the Buffaloes and playing a wounded team like Utah, but they just beat the brakes off of them and they're doing what they should do. And I think what's interesting, we're going to learn a lot against a Kansas team that all of a sudden looks rejuvenated. They end the perfect season for BYU. If Colorado puts out another phenomenal performance and wins going away, how seriously, I'll kick this back to you guys. How seriously do we have to take these guys, not just to make the playoff field, but to win a game or two?
They could win a game. But I mean, I have them. I mean, they're going to be like 2 touchdown underdogs versus the top teams in the country. If it gets to that point. Uh, I mean, and you mentioned like Colorado, who have they played? I mean, their best win is, let's see, from a power ratings perspective, looks like as of right now, current power ratings, Baylor, when they needed a Hail Mary at home to win. I mean, Baylor's playing way better than they were in September at the time, which is why they've like risen up my power ratings of late. But their other wins in conference are UCF, Arizona, Cincy, Texas Tech, and Utah.
It is the best
A
win North
wounded
Dakota
Utah.
State. North Dakota State's probably the best win outside of Baylor.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, they have exceeded all expectations, and yeah, you have 2 top 5 picks on offense, and one of them also plays defense, but it's hard for me to see them making a run when they're trying to compete with these national type teams. But again, there's no like clear elite team, so any given day, you never know. Uh, I just don't know if their D can ultimately hold up against the elites and their offensive line, which has played better, but take that offensive line and put them against Ole Miss or Georgia, and I mean Sanders is going to be running for his life, which would be my concern. Speaking of the Big 12, I'll go through the rest of the tiebreakers, but after I get the Colin, the Big 12, more chaos. There is a TCU Texas Tech scenario. There is a scenario where Baylor gets in, where West Virginia gets in. Now, the most likely, there's 3 teams that control their own destiny: BYU, Colorado, and Arizona State. Now, Arizona State and BYU play each other this week, and Colorado has to go to Kansas if Arizona State, if Arizona State, so what happens is if one of Colorado or BYU slip up and Iowa State wins out and Arizona State wins out, Arizona State would have the tiebreaker over Iowa State. But if both BYU and Colorado slip up once, which the most likely one, it would be BYU losing at Arizona State, Colorado losing at Kansas, and Iowa State runs the table, it would be Iowa State versus Arizona State, which would get there in a four-way tiebreaker because Colorado and BYU's schedule of conference opponents is pathetic compared to Iowa State and Arizona State. But there is more chaos to come. I think Colorado's going to lose this weekend. I think BYU is going to lose this weekend. So yeah, it's going to get pretty nutty in the Big 12 with just 2 weeks to go. If you're wondering about clinch scenarios, BYU can clinch with a win and a Utah win over Iowa State. Colorado can clinch with a win over Kansas and wins by BYU and Utah. So they're the only two teams. BYU and Colorado are the only two teams that can clinch a berth in the Big 12 championship this weekend. Arizona State, while they do control their own destiny, they cannot clinch this weekend. Collin, I'll throw it to you. Takeaway from week 12. Don't bet against Sammy Pittman as a double-digit dog.
No, the bigger takeaway from that game is that Sark likes to take knees. So I think it's that time of year where you want to gauge where a team's stock is heading into the postseason. Sometimes we get to bowls. We don't really know where teams are, especially the early bowls because of signing day, because of the portal. These coaches sometimes more obsessed with those items than they are the bowl games. There are three teams to me that are an auto bet. Kansas, Florida, led by the former coach of Louisiana Lafayette, and Air Force. And that's where you're going to say, wait a minute, 3-7 Air Force. What the hell are you talking about? They're number 5 on the APR ranking. Everybody should go out and read Brett McMurphy's bowl projections where he puts out the APR teams. And Air Force would be 5th in that list. They're at 3-7. So obviously they got to get to 5. And they've got 2 games that are going to be coin tosses with Nevada and San Diego State. But those 3 teams, Florida, Kansas, Air Force, automatic bets when bowl numbers come out. So let's just hope Air Force gets in. They're finally back to running the triple efficiently under Quentin Hayes. Very impressive performance. I know how bad Oregon State is on the run D, but the fact that Air Force is back to doing what they do, and it took 10 games to get there, they're a play on team when it comes to the postseason if they make it.
Yeah, well, you also had to expect that they would improve. Troy Calhoun's a great coach, and they reset the roster entirely, right? So you're starting to see some of the experience that they've gained in the first half of the season start to pay off, and you're seeing that play out on the field. Collin touting Billy Napier as an auto play in the bowl. What a time to be alive. Also, the other team that could get up there with 5 wins, I've talked about, which would be an auto play for me. Rice. Get Rice in a bowl. All right, futures talk. I mean, the Heisman to me, if you want to bet the Heisman right now, I would think that the way to go, I'm looking here, FanDuel has Travis Hunter minus 330. I mean, look, I don't understand why he went to that big of a favorite. I get that Gabriel didn't do much. Ward recently lost. But Hunter, he didn't even have a good game. Yes, he scored a touchdown late. They gave him a touchdown. He got a pick. It was just a lucky tip, but he was getting roasted out there by Isaac Wilson. It wasn't a great game. So I think if you want to invest in the Heisman now, and I don't, being fully transparent, I'm a Heisman voter, one of the million. So I don't bet on the Heisman, but I would look at Gabriel at 40-1 now I guess he's 35-1 at FanDuel. Oregon still hasn't lost. They're going to play Washington. And then if he beats presumably Ohio State again and they finish undefeated and say Colorado loses at Kansas, we've seen how much these odds can change on a week-to-week basis. I would think now is the time to look at Dylan Gabriel. You also could look at Cam Ward if Miami ends up running the table, and he's going to get Wake and Syracuse, two really bad defenses, and then presumably the ACC championship game. So yeah, I think looking at one of those two quarterbacks, and if you believe Indiana beats Ohio State, then maybe you look at Curtis Rourke. But I think there's some opportunity here with Hunter. Just I don't get this move. I get the narrative. I get how special of what he's done, but like who has he done it against? It wasn't even a great performance. They're not a lock to get to the Big 12 championship, not a lock to get to the college football playoff. I think
He's
there's
not even a
there's a
lock
little
to
bit of
win the
opportunity.
Biletnikoff. That should probably go to what? Nick Nash? He should win the Biletnikoff. So Heisman
I'm
for
a I'm
Hunter.
a
That's where
Blitnikoff
that's where my
voter.
votes. Yeah, that's where my votes
Number
are
one.
going.
You gotta vote. You have to vote for 10 choices for that, by the way.
Yeah,
You do 10 options. Um, Nick Nash was
my number one. It was my
my
number one
number one.
stuck.
Yeah, was my number one.
But Stuck, you have to remember this too. At least I think Brett told us like at least 75% of the voters make up their mind after the conference championship games. If Colorado's not even represented, or if Travis Hunter has a bad game and Dylan Gabriel just has a masterpiece against Ohio State, you're right, right?
Or Milrow. Milrow's even if you like Alabama to win the SEC, they have the leg up on in a lot of these tiebreakers in the SEC.
If he would have gotten
Um,
LSU's front seven in the SEC championship game, he would have had even better numbers for the Heisman.
yeah, that's true. The the SEC, for what it's worth, as of right now, there are three teams that basically control their own destiny: Texas and Texas A&M. And they obviously play each other. So Alabama, if they win out, they do have the tiebreaker. Like if there's like a five-way, a four-way tiebreaker, they do have a tiebreaker over everyone. The one exception would be Georgia would nudge them out barely, but they need all four of these results to go their way to flip the strength of conference record. So Georgia needs Mississippi State to beat Missouri, Arkansas to beat Missouri, Texas to beat Texas A&M, Tennessee to beat Vandy. So obviously the hardest part of that equation is Missouri losing out. But if that happens, Georgia then, and then you have to assume that Georgia, who does Georgia play? I know they play Georgia Tech.
Georgia Tech and
Oh, and then they
UMass.
play UMass. They're done. So their SEC schedule's done. This is assuming Bama doesn't lose to Auburn, um,
Yeah,
and
Oklahoma.
or Oklahoma, and that would be the only way that Alabama doesn't win the tiebreaker. So, you know,
Do you
if
want to
all of
win the
those,
tiebreaker? I mean,
if I'm
Alabama and
Alabama,
Georgia are
no,
in.
yeah, I wouldn't want to play an extra game. Um, but the most likely scenario is Alabama versus the winner of Texas A&M. But it's no given that Texas A&M is beating Auburn this weekend. So, but Texas versus Alabama is the most likely scenario. But there still could be some chaos in the SEC. All right, before we move on, quick announcement for you guys. Action Network is running back our annual Black Friday sale, offering our best price of the year on a year-long Action Pro subscription. So if you still aren't a Pro subscriber, visit actionnetwork.com/Black Friday to get $40 a year off of Pro and receive instant access to all of the picks and projections from myself, Collin Calabrese, and our whole Action Network team. That's actionnetwork.com/Black Friday for the best price of the year on Action Pro. Or do you guys have any other thoughts on the Heisman?
So this is a rare year that I'm actually well positioned. I put pizza money on Genty, pizza money on Travis Hunter. So I have a nice payout awaiting me if either can get there. But looking at the rest of the board, I'm kind of holding off. In a weird way, I would want Oregon somehow to get upset by Washington, and then I would buy a ticket on Gabriel because I think his odds would go through the roof. but then it gives extra importance to that Big Ten title game. Everything is about narrative. Everything's about stage and opportunity. If Oregon then needed to beat Ohio State the second time to win the conference, to get the bye, to potentially move back up to number one, I think that's a better narrative for him to move past Hunter and Genty. Curtis Rourke, I agree. If you believe in the Hoosiers, I still think he's underpriced. Was he at 50 or 60 to 1 to win the Heisman? Unfortunately, he missed that one start. I think he has
Yeah.
missed 5 or 6 quarters this season, and that certainly hurt his overall stats. The other one that I think, if you just want to mess around with some couch change, just hear me out from a narrative perspective. If Bryson Daly scores 9 touchdowns in the last 2 regular season games before the vote and before the AAC title game and upsets Notre Dame, where is he in this mix? I think every voter is a human being. Everyone's going to at least look at him from a storyline perspective. And if he gets close to 36, 38 total touchdowns, I think he only has 1 turnover the whole season, and they're playing their way into the college football playoff. I think, at 200 to 1, it's at least worth a gamble if you think they have any chance of upsetting Notre Dame. Notre Dame's been on the warpath for really the past month. So in terms of a long shot, flavor, you got Rourke, you got Daly, and then even if you want to hop in now on Gabriel, I think he's priced to move. So you might as well go with that if you're looking to hedge a little bit.
By the way, ACC, I think SMU loses this weekend to Virginia, but they would still be ahead of Clemson. Clemson's done. They're 7-1. They don't have any more ACC games left. But so if SMU loses and Miami wins out, they all finish 7-1. It would be SMU and Miami. But Clemson can get there if Miami loses at Syracuse is the most likely scenario. So Clemson's in wait and see mode. SMU could also lose out, which, it's not out of the realm of possibilities. Just looking at Colin's facial expressions here. They're at Virginia, then host Cal. So that's the ACC. The American is easy. The American is easy. We know who it's going to be already. Tulane versus Army. Let's see.
Tulane 5-1 to make the playoff. I actually do have Boise State power rated ahead of them, but man,
Not by much.
Tulane's hot.
Yeah. Let's see. We did ACC, we did AAC, did Big 12. Big 10 looks like it's going to be Oregon. I mean, Oregon's done. They have Washington, but probably should win that game. So it looks like it's going to be Oregon versus the winner of Ohio State, Indiana. So most likely scenario is Ohio State versus Oregon. Conference USA is crazy because Western Kentucky somehow lost, and Liberty, who shouldn't have won, somehow won over UMass. So now you have the top 4 teams: Jack State, Western Kentucky, Sam Houston, and Liberty. They all control their own destiny. All of them, because they all play each other over the past 2 weeks. So even though Liberty is 2 games behind Jacksonville State, they play the 2 teams that are ahead of them in the standings in Western Kentucky and Sam Houston. They beat both of them. They're in. Jack State, obviously still undefeated, but they could still miss the Conference USA title game. Pretty crazy. I think so. If all of them finish tied at 6-2, it'll be Liberty versus Western Kentucky. So that's pretty wild. The MAC, you have 3 teams that control their own destiny: Ohio, Miami of Ohio, and Bowling Green. Bowling Green and Miami of Ohio obviously play each other next week. Here's the thing with Bowling Green: if you have Bowling Green futures like we do, they lose tiebreakers because of their conference strength of schedule. So if they end up losing, they just got to win out. So if they end up losing to like Miami of Ohio and, say Toledo and Ohio also finish with 2 losses, with their conference record, they're going to lose that tiebreaker. You could end up having Miami of Ohio, Miami versus Ohio, a rivalry game, or you could have Bowling Green versus Toledo. So we could see a rivalry game in the MAC. Lots to be determined, but just the Miami of Ohio Bowling Green game will be huge. Although I think my vibe might lose to Northern Illinois to throw another wrench into it.
Yep.
Um, in the Mountain West, Colorado State, Boise State is in the Mountain West Championship, even if they lose to Wyoming. Colorado State controls its own destiny, and the only other team that can get there is UNLV. Colorado State, they're a dog at Fresno this week. If
And,
Colorado State and UNLV,
and we're waiting on injuries. A lot of injury report.
yeah, if Colorado State wins, if they beat Fresno, they're in. Um, I'm trying to think, what if they tie? I think it comes down to computer ratings.
Will they be a 9-point favorite over Utah State? But if they lose
No,
to,
I'm saying if they end up tied in the standings. So if Colorado State loses,
it's the BCS formula.
yeah, no, I think it's like a blended. They have like a blended. Remember this happened last year with
Yeah,
the
Yeah,
Mountain
it
West.
includes the Harris poll. It's just it's
Yeah, I would assume UNLV would be ahead of Colorado State. Like if they went out, Colorado State loses this weekend. Um, but I don't know. I have to look at the math. That basically last year like determined who got home. That was pretty wild. I remember. The Pac-2, Washington State has won the Pac-2. Oregon State stinks, even though they play each other. That this will, I guess, determine it this weekend. Went over the SEC. The Sun Belt just got very interesting. I have JMU tickets, which now have life, which didn't look like they would have life because Georgia Southern lost to Troy, and they don't have the head-to-head over Georgia Southern. And now James Madison has to finish ahead of Georgia Southern, but that certainly can happen looking at these schedules. Marshall leads the division, but Marshall is at Old Dominion and then at JMU. So if JMU can win out, and Georgia Southern, they're at Coastal, they could lose that game. Then they host App. A lot of teams are alive in the East, and then Louisiana losing to South Alabama made it a bit more interesting. But they're still a game ahead, and they have Troy at home, and then they're at ULM. They probably get there, but they got three teams sitting right behind them, and they don't have the head-to-head versus South Alabama. Do you have any Sunbelt thoughts, Calabrese? Did I get that all right?
You got that all right. I'm just glad that, some people are getting healthy. Like South Alabama is so much more dangerous with Gio back in the lineup. So just from a pure watchability standpoint, I'm glad that some of the top teams in the West are playing at a better level. Louisiana is a great story, as is Monroe. I think there's some feel-good stories about, how these teams have been able to put it together. And certainly in the portal era, these teams just get plucked. Whichever best players you got, first team, second team, all conference, they usually end up moving up to a Power Four team. So I'm happy for them. But yeah, preseason I had Texas State against James Madison in the title game. I'll vent next August about the Bobs, but as of right now, I'm glad that James Madison can get there, and I would like to see a national stage for JMU because I think what Chesney's been able to do right away has flown under the radar really since that upset of North Carolina. That's the last time that they've got some notoriety at a national level, and I think they deserve it.
South
I'll
Alabama.
do.
That's
Good.
11-1 South Alabama. They already hold a tiebreaker over Louisiana. They're going to play Texas State to end the season. 11-1 is a good number for. I mean, they need Louisiana to take a loss. That's got to come against ULM or
Troy, I believe.
or Troy. Which I mean,
Troy's
I
playing
think
better.
I think
I'm happy with
ULM
that.
can muck it up. They're born
Yeah.
to play that style. Hardy can just run 30 times. They can try to win 17-13 or something like that. Crazier things have happened.
I like South Alabama 11-1, especially that tiebreaker over Louisiana. And
Looking
potentially Texas State.
here, if there is a path for Arkansas State still. There is. It's not a likely one, but there is a path. We do have some midweek Maction to get to. We got weather. I haven't gone through my weather yet. It's that time of year.
A lot of 50%, 10 mile an hour. Like, I don't know if it's going to be
Nothing
DeKalb.
crazy.
Yeah, nothing too bad so far.
Always worth keeping an eye out. Tuesday, I like Northern Illinois, but I need three or more. I think it's going to be a super low scoring game. I think Northern Illinois can run on Miami. I think Northern Illinois has the best defense in the conference. I think that's a game you just take the field goal with. So I like Northern Illinois there. I got nothing in Western or Central. Like I can't lay points with Western with their defense, but can Central actually score? Maybe they'll just be able to run it. Like they might be able to just run it all day on Western, who can't stop anything. Akron, Kent, the wagon wheel. I made it 10.5. So I was afraid I was going to have to play Kent. I was shocked. I made it 10.5. Akron minus 10.5 at Kent State. I got nothing there. Wednesday, more of a spot play. I like Eastern under a field goal. To get the bowl eligibility, it's a good spot. Their run defense has improved. Buffalo's defense is headed in the wrong direction. More of a spot play there. Toledo, Ohio. I lean Toledo. And it's the first time all year, but I'm just too low in Ohio, and I haven't been fading them. And even though I should per my numbers, but I realized that I was dead wrong on them on the Bobs. So my two favorite are EMU under a field goal. Northern Illinois need a field goal or more. Colin, anything in MAC?
Yeah, I've already hit Northern Illinois. Their Arkansas book Bet Saracen had a 3 out there this morning, so had to scoop that up because you're exactly right. Like where Northern Illinois can defend is exactly what Miami of Ohio is going to do. It's a really bad matchup from a numbers perspective for Miami of Ohio. And then the other one, hey, I mean, wash, rinse, repeat. Akron, Kent State under until Kent State proves to me that this team can create a quality drive, which they did on their opening possession and scored a touchdown. As long as they don't score by special teams or some stupid crap, then, I'm just unders on Kent State games all the way. And Akron is, I mean, come on, they're not blitzing you down the field offensively either. So under for me on Akron, Kent State.
Copy's got anything in the MAC?
I mean, I'll take the wagon wheel. Like if you look at SP Plus, they rank 1 to 760 something at the NIAA or NAIA level. Akron 184th, Kent 237th. They're just 2 spots below D2 Slippery Rock. It's not breaking any news. These teams are awful. But when you look at it, the last 2 years, Kent by 6, Akron by 4. Kent hasn't lost at home in this series by more than 9 points since 2002. I got Ulatowski throwing to Krishan McCray against Ball State, which I think really is their only comp in terms of an absolutely awful MAC team. They scored a ton of points. McCray had 8 catches, 213 yards, 3 touchdowns. I'll go ahead and take the points, particularly if it gets over 10, like at the hook. I can't lay this many points with an Akron team on the road. I don't care who they're playing, just purely out of respect for how poor Akron has been this year. Hey, if they go ahead and win this game by 21 points, I'll be happy to take my medicine on it, but I think Kent at least will show some fight to try to win one game for the entire season. And they've shown me a little bit of pop every once in a while offensively this season in the past 6 weeks. Hopefully I get it this week. I don't know, let's call it 24 points would be enough, 21 maybe. So I'll go with the Golden Flashes.
Slippery Rocks. I won't stand for Slippery Rock slander, by the way. They will be hosting New Haven at home in the D2 playoffs.
And by the way, Slippery Rock, some fantastic home field apparel gear. I think it's like a rock with a monocle and a cane and a fur coat. So yeah, Slippery Rock they got some cool swag here in Keystone State.
All right, that'll do it for today's episode. Thanks to Colin and Mike for joining me. Thanks to our producer, David, on the back end. Most importantly, thanks to all of you for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe. Tell a friend, tell an enemy, leave a 5-star review. I don't care if you say garbage. Those help us out. And Group of 5 guys will be back tomorrow with the Group of 5 preview. Colin and I will be back with the week. I mean, is it really week
13
college football betting preview on Thursday? We're putting those episodes out earlier. We'll be back live show 10:30 a.m. Eastern on Saturday. My run came to an end on the live show with San Jose State. Unbelievable. Live show 10:30 a.m. Eastern on Saturday. Thanks again for tuning in. It's time for us to go find some winners. We'll see you later in the week. Cheers.